Hello, listeners, and welcome to another episode of the Naked Coach Collective. You got the whole gang here, me, B, and D. Not
Hello.
trying to pronounce
Hello.
D's name ever again, because
Oh.
I'm awful. Today we're going to be talking about core values. So what are your core values? Why are they important? And also, what are core values? So, D, you wanted us to hurriedly start recording. So why don't you kick us off?
Oh, hello everyone. I think we pre-recording listeners, me and Ian and I were just sort of discussing what we were going to talk about, and it just got really good. So I was getting jumpy because I forget. I can't do things twice. So what was it we were talking about here?
There you go. So B, you were talking about, was it a story? God, I forgot now. Was it a story?
It was a client that I had, and it was a
Yeah.
while ago.
You kick us off, B.
And what I was trying to get across, because values, I think we always think of values. For me, they're things that I live by, that are important to me, okay? And they're things that make me me. So I think a lot of people, if you asked people what their values were, people would say things like honesty, integrity, stuff like that, okay? Or they might say they're more physical things like family, friends, that kind of thing. But what I was saying is that there comes a point in life when, if you are fortunate enough to have a passion for something and you also teach it, right? Okay, so you have a passion for it, but you also teach it. That becomes, the two things become a little bit muddled sometimes, and you find yourself doing it all the time. So whether you're teaching it or so in this particular instance, it was a lady who played an instrument but also taught people music. And the thing that I think that what she was finding was, it was quite hard to know to like reduce time down, but know that you're reducing time down in the right place, because it was a passion as well as a career. Does that make sense? So you can get the two muddled, and then you find yourself doing it all the time, and then you get quite tired and a little bit brain like foggy is what the word I was trying to say. Sorry, foggy. I was going to say brain fuzz, but I meant foggy.
I just heard "fuh," and I was like, brain what?
And I think that I can't understand, because like Dee said, what's that value? And I said, for me, it's self-care. It's knowing when to stop. It's knowing when to give yourself a break. It's knowing when your body needs to rest. And I actually think that's a really important value that a lot of people don't think about and don't undertake, especially knowingly. As coaches, we get better at doing it because we become more aware of it, I think, when we're coaching. But actually, a lot of people, the self-care element of looking after themselves so that they're better for everyone else, actually goes to the bottom of the pile. And it's a value that's a core value that's very underrated.
So I must admit, for me, only recently has that really started to take shape as a value for me. Because previously it was just like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Don't care.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uni, lots of drinking. Obviously, what else are you going to do? You're not going to learn anything. But it's only kind of come to light for me recently, purely because of what I'm doing now with the coaching and building that vision and heading towards that kind of dream life that I would love to live. And part of that, I got to a point in my kind of vision and dream when I was working with a coach was, I want to be strong. I want to be healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I mean, like the past 32 days, I've done like workouts every single day with like just 1 or 2 days off. So that's kind of really started to pick up for me now on a kind of personal level, whereas previously it never has. So I think that's an important thing to note as well, is that these things are changeable. They're not set in stone, although some of them are likely to be.
Yeah.
But things can change on whatever kind of journey or path you're following.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think your core values will change throughout your life as your requirements for where you're at in your life changes. Your core value is going to change. For example, I mean, this week my daughter's gone off to, she's finished studying, so she's living a life now, a job and flatmates, so her values are just going to be so different to what they were even a year ago, and so different to what mine are now. Now she just wants to experience life as an adult, and that core values are going to be, I mean, I don't really want to say not as deep, because they are just as valid for a 20-year-old as they are for a 50-year-old. So
they're just probably very different, aren't they, Dee? That's
very
it.
different. Oh goodness, very different. And some, if you have conversations cross generations, sometimes it's very hard to understand the other person's perspective, and because they're talking from a place where their core value is so different from yours, that you could be talking at each other like this, and it's not necessarily parents and children, but even in a work situation or wherever where you have lots of different age groups, you could definitely have a conflict in communication because your core values are different.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how can we, for the listeners who don't really know what a core value is, how can we articulate what it is? Let's go to you first.
Okay. So, I mean, I think core value is what you live by. So the things that are the most important to you, and you can say, well, what's the most important thing to you? And, what will come to mind? Maybe it'll be, like we suggested, it'll be your family. Or for me, I was sitting and thinking about this, and I was thinking, well, family came up, community came up, hard work came up, and what sort of ties all that together, and where I'm different now, my D now to D 5 years ago, is that I am definitely more, and I know B, you're going to talk about this, so I'm not going to talk too much about it, is that I'm just so much more honest to myself about myself. These are, and these are different to what they would have been 10 years ago. So I think if you're thinking about what are core values, they're how you live your life. They're what you live your life by. They're the rules that you give yourself.
Yeah.
And they're different for everyone.
Yeah, they are. And the thing is, from where I was, let's say 20 years ago to where I am now, so I was living my life through other people's values. So through what you do tend to take on other people's values as you grow up, as you get old, as you start sort of out in life. You obviously listen to your parents, you're influenced by your parents, by your family, by your friends. And for a long time, there was a narrative that I sort of thought I should be living by. And that's what I did, only to find myself in a very, very unhappy place, doing jobs that I didn't like, trying to be a person that I wasn't actually physically and, mentally. And I think so when we were talking, when we were talking about core values, the first thing that came up for me was authenticity. And it's taken me maybe 10 years to really become authentic. To be okay with being authentic, I think is the word. Because initially when you start, you might be doing it for yourself, but then you don't necessarily share that with other people because you think, oh, they're not going to like that. They're not going to, because I did things for so long just to be liked, just to be accepted, just to fit in. And almost now, it's not that I'm rebelling, it's not that I'm at the opposite end of the scale, but I'm okay now with saying, actually, do you know what? I don't see it from that point of view. I see it from this point of view, or, when I had pink hair, which was 12 years ago, it was quite unusual. And people go, oh my God, and you're so brave. And I'd be like, no, actually, I just really like it. It's just me. It's not brave. And this is what the authenticity for me is my top umbrella, because underneath that brings out then my honesty, my integrity. People trust me more because I am I'm able to be honest. I'm able to be me. And then, also then I've now cultivated, a strong marriage through being more authentic, and also strong relationships with my family. Okay, yes, I'll be honest with you. Some people have fallen by the wayside along my journey as well, because they may not have liked the authentic me, or, the authentic me is different. But, that the value that I live by is authenticity. And then the underneath values are my sort of go-to values, which are trust, honesty, integrity, treat people as you expect to be treated. Always, that's really sort of strong for me. And just be kind. And I know that came up a lot during like the months of COVID, didn't it? But that for me is much more than just what people for me, being kind is being understanding of other people's points of views. Everybody is entitled to an opinion. I would never try to change somebody else's opinion to mine. If somebody else asks me, so how do you see it then? And I will explain. Equally, I wouldn't expect somebody else to impress an opinion on me anymore, because I wouldn't take that on anymore. But in the past I have. Do you see what I mean? So that's why it sort of pins everything for me, because if I'm being authentically me, I like the authentic me, and I know that I'm a good, kind, honest, caring person, then everything falls in line for me. As soon as I become unauthentic or out of line, as I was in the past, I become unhappy. And I'm not good for people. I'm not good for people to be around me. So so when you're trying to find your values, if you're not finding them, or you're unhappy, or you don't feel them, when you say the words you don't really feel them, then maybe you're not living your values. Maybe you're living someone else.
I just want to ask you a question about that, because I know it's not exactly what we're talking about today, but what changed in you to start thinking, right, okay, I've been listening to other people taking on their values for far too long now. Time for me to...
I think there was two things. Firstly, the breakdown of my first marriage. It took a huge... I mean, there was... So I'll clear this now. People sort of have breakdown marriage for lots of reasons. Mine, he didn't... There was nothing wrong. Because that's... Do you see what I mean? But just... We grew. We were two different people. We grew in two different ways, okay? But to actually be able to admit that when family members are going, oh, yeah, but he's perfect. You got money, you got a house, you got this. Do you see what I mean? It's that kind of thing. So, but I was really unhappy, really unhappy. I was either high or low, and really unhappy. So I even considered at one point, what was my point in being here? And I think when you start considering those things, you start to, it's a sticky slope. So the first thing was actually leaving my husband, the first time, which was really, really hard for me, because I felt guilty, total guilt. Then I started to realise and started to sort of build up a picture of the person that I wanted to become out of that guilt. Does that make sense? And then I suppose my next biggest wake-up call would have been 5 years later, when I nearly lost my husband overnight. Well, my new husband, this was, sorry, that didn't sound good. So I remarried a few years later, and I nearly lost my husband. And he fell, basically he fell 30 foot slab, 2 bleeds on the brain, fractured skull, and they said he might die overnight. And if that doesn't wake you up, nothing will. And that was the point where I said, no more of this life. I'm not going to be ruled by diets trying to make myself look different, be different, behave different. I want to think about my career now. I don't want to do what everybody else thinks I should do. And, sometimes
it makes sense.
You get reminders along the way, and you either take note of them or you don't. But big things, it was a big, big thing for me, really big. And another big thing happened to propel me into coaching, as you all know. So it's been some really big things, but then lots of little niggly bits along the way.
Love that.
I think one thing you were talking about there, B, was if you're living your kind of values, then you're more happy, and it's kind of, I think fulfillment is kind of like a natural result of living by your values. And so we as coaches want to help people obviously feel fulfilled and everything. So we always kind of dive into what are your values, because we need to know that to help you progress to that life that you want to live, whatever area of life that is in. So, and a good example of values changing over time was for me personally. So as some people know from my kind of episode with my particular story, I was in a place at work where I was working into the evenings and weekends and doing crazy hours, and my head was just like a fog of noise, and it's very hard to describe. It's very hard to describe. It's like your head is buzzing with just constant noise. And so one of my kind of core values now, which is off the back of that, as a result of that, is just finding peace and quiet somewhere.
Yeah.
Finding somewhere where I can just sit and just listen to nothing.
And be still.
Yes, yeah, calm. However, on the flip side of that as well is love, absolutely love being adventurous is one of the kind of core values. To me, being adventurous is going traveling, exploring, climbing the mountains, all that kind of stuff. So I regularly try to get out and go exploring and mountain climbing and all that kind of stuff. So, and I'm obviously as well as part of my core values, I'm now trying to find that peace, that calm, that quiet as well. So, and happiness and fulfillment is a direct result of that. And so I think it's important for people to realize that this is why finding your core values is important, is because it will lead to that fulfillment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And on the flip side of that, if you're not living by your core values, it's very difficult to imagine you being very happy.
Yes.
Because something inside you is not being your real deep desires, core values, what you live by is not being nourished. So how can you be happy? And I think this is where you find, people who are always grumpy. Everybody knows people always grumpy, always moaning, always got something miserable to say. I think I don't know anybody like that, by the way. Right.
But we try to not surround ourselves with people like that, don't we? So that's the thing. Yeah.
That is such a true thing. Actually, yes. Yeah.
Drives me insane, this victim mentality of people.
But those people wouldn't like to be around us, really, would they? Because we're constantly happy and on the go. So, but you see, if they were to stop and have a think about, well, what is it that I really would make me happy, would really make me feel fulfilled, would really help me, make me feel satisfied. And if they lived according to those rules and those values, their own rules and their own values, then I think happiness has got to just emanate from that, doesn't it? If you feel, God, I want to live authentically, I am living authentically, so I'm happy.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think also the thing about finding your values is, okay, so like we said, they will change over time. And sometimes you can get a little bit lost when the changes start happening. And that's when having a sounding board is really important, I think. Not someone who influences you, someone who's just prepared to listen to you and maybe just ask you the right questions, which is essentially what we do. But I think the other thing that I was going to say about that is that if you have got a good hold and an understanding of your core values, and there's quite an easy way to do this, isn't there? It's just to sit quietly and write down all the things that are important to you. Okay, I will say one thing: core values aren't materialistic possessions. That's not what we're talking about. So when I say write down all the things that are important to you, the things that make you the person you are, how you present yourself, the things that give you pleasure in life, so your family and stuff. It's not the materialistic stuff. It's because I think sometimes what we forget also is some of the stuff that are core values we take for granted. We don't realise they're core values.
Yeah, like respect.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Passion, love.
Yeah. All of they are their core values. It's to write them all down. But I think when you've got a good hold on them, good understanding of them, if you come to a crossroads in your life, now we all come to crossroads where we have to make decisions about, do I go that way or do I go this way? When you've got your sort of real understanding of your core values, actually you can make those decisions much easier than you think, just by standing back and looking at the two options and which ones align best with which option aligns best with your core value. I have experienced that in the last week, as Dean and Ian know. But actually, understanding my core values and being able to stand back and look at that and the reasons of why I would go in that direction or that direction, actually has really helped me to understand what is the right direction.
And
Nice.
that kind of leads me on excellently, B. Thank you.
I'll do my best.
So I had this client. I may have talked about this previously, actually. So I had this client, and obviously, as people know, I used to help them. People kind of escape the 9 to 5 and set up a business, but kind of really dig into the dream and the vision behind that and what they want. And so the kind of first step in the program is understanding what that dream and that vision is that they want. Why do they want to set up a business? Because obviously, without knowing that, you might not like it. And so this client came to me, and we were chatting away, and I was trying to understand what his core values were. So I was asking him, so just tell me what you want. What do you want? And he said, well, I want to quit my job. Why? Well, I want to be my own boss. And we kept going and going and going. And it got to the point where I think I asked the question, why, or what does that get for you, about 7 or 8 times. And we got to a point where he was like, well, I want to be there for my wife and my children more than I currently am. I'm like, right, okay. So what will that get for you? And it got to the point where he identified that I just don't want to be like my dad.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, so if you don't want to be like your dad, do you want to be? And he was like, I want to be the best father and husband that I can possibly be. I was like, so doesn't that feel much more better than I want to quit my job? And so we were then at a point where he was at a crossroads of, well, do I actually want to set up a business, or do I want to do something else? So we kind of mapped out, okay, so how can you live your life to be a better husband and a better dad? What can you start to do in order to live that kind of value? And then I think it was about a month and a half later, he was like, Ian, you know what? I don't need to do this. I don't need to do that. Let's set up that business.
Yep.
I just want to carry on as I am on this. And he'd essentially got a different job from what he was doing, one that just gave him more time with his family. And so, yeah, it's strange how identifying what it is you truly want, what these core values are, can have such an impact on which direction your life kind of goes.
Absolutely.
Could you marry that with thinking about times in your life? Because that's an abstract thing, isn't it? What do you want? What do you want? So could you marry that with asking, somebody who's trying to think about what their core values are, because it's a bit fuzzy in their head, to find a bit of clarity on that. Maybe you can say, well, what were the times in your life when you were at your happiest? And then they can start thinking about when they were happy. Or, what were times in your life when you felt you've achieved something, or you felt a sense of pride, and what feelings came from that? What feelings come from remembering and recalling times when you felt like you'd achieved something big, you were fulfilled, you had a sense of achievement in what you've been doing. So when you think about maybe your reason why do you want that? Why do you want that? Are there any times in your past that you can marry that with, and then together come up with some really strong core values, because you're based on experience and also what they want and also how they are feeling right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. Yeah. And I think also the other thing that you can do is use people that you encounter in your life that you either want to be like or definitely don't want to be like, as in Ian's case. So, because I think actually that's a really strong driver, you understanding who you are and what you want. If you experience someone in your life and you've looked at the way they are and the way they behave, and you're like, I don't ever want to be like that. I just don't want to be that person. Or equally, you've got someone who you look up to, you go, wish I could be like that. Did you know what I'm saying? Their traits and the way they deal with people and stuff. And I think that's really key to helping you understand your values, is having because that helps you have definite don't wants and definite wants. Do you know what I mean? There's sort of that help you start looking at your core values. Absolutely.
It was when I was being coached a while ago. Someone asked me a great question. The coach asked me a great question, and I thought, oh yeah, I've been doing that so long. And it was, they said to me when we were like digging into what my core values were. They asked me, what do you used to love to do when you were a kid? And I used to obviously I used to be constantly like just out in the woods on my bike. I was never home. I was constantly out exploring, all that kind of stuff. And I was like, yeah, I've been doing it my whole life. So yeah, I think that's one of my core values.
Yeah.
I mean, you could already be living to your core values without even having, well, most people do, don't they? Most people do live their core values without even actually naming it. But if you want to and you're struggling, then, these are the things that you can do.
But also to understand that you will be, there'll be part, even if you're unhappy, generally most people have a part that's happy. Okay. So if you've got those two sides, then look at the times when you're happy and what you're doing or what's surrounding you or what's filling you at that point. And when you're unhappy, look at what that is. Because actually sometimes you don't need to change all your values. You just need to understand the bit that's not making you very happy. And then work through that bit, change that bit, and then you'll have a much more balanced life. Does that make sense? So for me, I say I changed I didn't change all my values. I certainly changed some of the ones that had been influenced by other people. And about the look and all of that kind of stuff. But actually, some of my values, like kindness, has always been in my life. That's always been a part of my life.
Question for you, B. Sorry, D. Question for you, B. With you saying that you were living, you just said you changed your value from other people's values.
Yeah.
So, question is, was that ever actually a value, or did you just think it was the way to live?
That was my question. Did you think did you think it was behaviour? Was it your behaviour that changed?
Okay, possibly, but I think there was an element of me that believed I was only valuable, if I looked a certain way. Without that, I didn't believe I was valuable as a person. So maybe not an actual value to live by, but I believed there was a certain way to look for you to be a valuable person. Am I making sense? Sorry.
Yeah.
So what was important to you? What was important to you? You didn't actually perceive as being important to anybody else about you.
So at that point, there was like, the only way I'm going to be valuable is if I look this way, then I'll get everything I want, because that will give me my happy ever after. Right? That was what I truly believed at one point. And actually, that's rubbish. Far, far, far from the truth. And actually, change I've changed so much in that respect, to the point where I have no qualms about what anybody else thinks of me. It doesn't interest me. You can think what you like about me. I know me. I love me. I really like me a lot most of the time. And actually, do you know what? What other people think of me is really none of my business. I don't care. But I couldn't have said that 20 years ago. I cared so much about what other people thought about me and the way I looked and that. So was it a value? Then it was a value. Now it's a totally different value. It's the opposite value. Does that make sense?
It does.
I'm so much more valuable now.
Question to D. Can you repeat what you just said to B when you asked that question? Because it hurt my head when you said it. What you said, I was like, oh my God. It's just giving me a headache trying to think about what you said.
Do you remember the beginning of this episode when I say once something has left my mouth, I forgot?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
No, I know what I said. So basically, I said it was about you.
You don't remember.
You had the core value.
Yeah.
And it was the behavior that you thought, you always had that value. But you thought that if you behaved in the way that represented your value, nobody would like you. and
Totally.
nobody would accept you. So therefore you had to, even though you were burying your core values, to live somebody else's values. And that made you unhappy. And obviously you were unhappy. And as soon as you stop doing that, you now are happy and living in living to your own tune, marching to your own drum, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. In a really good way, not in a selfish way. People don't get this. It's not in a selfish way at all. It's in an honest, authentic, truthful way. And then I'm so much nicer to be around for a
I was going
start.
to say, you're probably nicer to be around. People
And I can
probably like you
talk more than I ever did.
Yeah.
So it's I feel like it's been a bit about me tonight. So can we go to somebody else?
Well,
One
I
kind
can
of
story about what made me sad today was, when you were talking about you would have been affected by what people said, and like, I know this is going to go out in a few weeks' time and this will be old news, but at the moment I'm just promoting my the pro bono campaign and I want to help people. I want to get 3 women through my program and change their lives, and I want to do that and give it to them for free. And so I posted this in social media in a group, and the first comment was scam. All right, that was and I thought, I'm being sincere here. I want to share something that I know is going to make a positive impact on these 3 women's lives. People who might not be able to afford coaching. Because I think part of coaching is that you always have to give back, because
absolutely, yeah,
that's what makes you grow, right? So, and they just put scam, and it was the first thing, and I thought, freaking scam. And it's the first time I can remember in a very long time that I've been actually attacked in any way. And I know they don't know me, right? They don't know. It's fine, and I can rationalize it, but it didn't make me. It really upset my day. Yeah, here's me thinking I'm living. I don't care what other people think, but actually, I did care. What a stranger.
Okay, so you did care, but the great thing is that you turned it around because you rationalised it.
I did, but it took me a couple of hours.
Yeah, but the more it happens, the quicker it'll get. Seriously, and I don't say that nastily, but that's just social media space.
Yeah.
Like I say, I can be authentic sometimes, and I don't know if you ever remember. I put out a post ages ago, and I was singing a song that said something about look at me, or I can't remember now. It was a really positive upbeat, and the bloke just put well, you're obviously not that, are you?
God, yeah, and it throws you. I mean, did you manage to let it?
Oh yeah, I didn't respond. I don't respond, and all of that. I just ignore it, whatever. And I actually sat there and went, well, my husband thinks I am. So that matters to me.
I was thinking,
monkeys, what you think. So it's not nice when it happens.
Yeah, it wasn't nice. I just thought, you don't know me, and it's just ask me a decent question, I'll give you the answer.
Got in.
I had one. I was on a hike and I took like a picture of the moon setting behind the mountains whilst the sun was behind me rising.
Yeah.
And I posted it, and I was like, what a great moon set, because it was such a nice picture. And the first comment was, does the sun rise? It's called a sunrise. And I thought, you cheeky mother. So I messaged them back, and I messaged them privately and sent them like a Google of what's a moon set. I was like, look at that bell end. Because I really wasn't in a mood of, letting it wash off my back. Because it was like one of the very first things I'd ever posted on social media. Thought, you cheeky tosser. In terms of values, one final thing I wanted to say was that the core values are also important, because people want to always think about the pain that they're kind of in at that particular moment to get them to somewhere else. But that will kind of only get them so far along the way. But having those values there will kind of help pull them the rest of the way and kind of drive them to where they eventually want to get to. So that's kind of another important factor in understanding what your kind of core values are. I don't know, B, anything else you wanted to say?
I
to
would
wrap
just
this up?
say, I think values, I call my values my anchors.
Mm.
So they anchor me. So if I'm upset or if I'm in pain, like or over anything, or if I've got to make a decision over something, always refer back to my anchors. If I do that, if I could do that, what's that going to feel like? I'm upset right now. How do I change that? What is the anchors that I have already within me that are my truths that will help me change it around? So I actually always refer to my core values as my anchors.
Nice.
They
Dee?
keep me grounded.
Just think, listen to, just be aware that other people's values, core values, may not be the same as yours, but understanding, and you can still have the best of relationships with people who have different core values, because we just understand and we are compassionate beings. And just because somebody doesn't feel the same way about things as you do, doesn't mean you can't have a friendship relationship with them, either as on an individual basis or even on a community, bigger, wider range. People have different values, but all are valid.
Lovely.
Yeah.
So that wraps up this episode of the Naked Coach Collective. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I think that's the first time I've remembered to actually say that. So please do, just as a well done, Ian, for remembering. And
Yeah.
until next time, remember, folks,
Be there.
be there.
And be naked.
Whoop, whoop. Whoop, whoop.